she found him in the darkest corner of the alley. His expensive suit was crumpled, and his face was stained with tears. The street lamp above him flickered, casting uncertain light over his trembling figure. A discarded piece of lace, perhaps from the wedding that never was, lay at his feet. The alley smelled of stale air and despair. She hesitated at first, unsure if she should approach him, but something about his heartbreaking sobs drew her forward. It was as if his sorrow had created an invisible rope, pulling her closer. And so, despite her own fears and doubts, she placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. He did not see her at first, because his head was bowed. In that moment, she realized she was looking at a broken groom still dressed for the ceremony that never happened. Liz was the kind of person who walked home from work each evening with her shoulders hunched and her eyes scanning the ground. She did this to avoid trouble. In her part of the city, it was never wise to draw too much attention to yourself. She was not well off. She shared a tiny apartment with her younger sister and worked 2 jobs to help pay the rent. Her first job was as a cashier in a small grocery store, and her second was as a caretaker for an elderly woman a few blocks away. That evening, it had been a rough shift at the store. Someone had left with unpaid groceries. Liz tried to stop them, but they ran out before she could do anything. The manager blamed her for the loss, docking a bit of her pay. Then, a regular customer who was usually friendly took out his own frustration on her because the store was out of his favorite cereal. By the time she left work, she was exhausted. She walked slowly, hugging her coat around her to block the chilly wind. She saw a fancy car driving away from the block before she turned into the alley that served as a shortcut to her apartment. At first, she paid no attention. Wealthy folks sometimes passed through, though it never ended well if they stopped. She had no idea that the car belonged to the man she was about to meet. The man slumped on the ground, looking like his world had just ended. The moment she saw him, she had a choice to make: keep walking or offer help. Most people in the city would have looked the other way. But Liz, tired as she was, could not let someone cry like that without at least checking if he was okay. So she approached. She noted his suit was made of fine material. He wore a rose pinned to his lapel, and there was a gold watch on his wrist. She guessed he must be well off. This made her cautious, but also curious. Why was a man like this sitting on the cold pavement, sobbing like his heart was shattered? "Excuse me," she whispered. "Are you all right?" He did not answer at first. His sobs were soft but deep. She could feel his grief in the silence between them. Liz knelt beside him, her knees touching the damp ground. She saw the tears trailing down his cheeks. There was a ring on his finger, simple, but shining in the dim light. Finally, he looked up at her, as if seeing her for the first time. His eyes were bloodshot. Liz felt a wave of sympathy rush over her. She had never been in that exact situation, but she knew heartbreak. She had lost her parents at a young age, and she knew what pain felt like. Without thinking, she leaned forward and gave him a small hug, careful yet firm. He froze at first, as if unused to kindness from strangers. Then he melted against her shoulder and cried anew. They stayed like that for a few minutes in the alley. The city noise faded away. The wind carried the smell of old trash and car exhaust. But inside that quiet moment, there was a shared sense of brokenness that formed a small bond. Liz did not know who he was, or why his bride had left him, but she knew sorrow when she saw it. And so she offered what little comfort she could. Eventually, he pulled away, looking ashamed and awkward. He tried to straighten his suit jacket, which only drew attention to how wrinkled it was. He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. "Thank you," he said in a voice thick with emotion. "I don't know who you are, but thank you for not walking away." Liz offered a warm, if hesitant, smile. "I'm Liz, and it's okay. Sometimes you just need someone to be there. He nodded, still looking lost. I'm Matthew, he said. Matthew Young. Liz recognized the name. Young Industries was a massive business in the city. It produced everything from electronics to home goods. She had seen his face on the covers of magazines at the grocery store. He was a millionaire, rumored to be a charming bachelor. But those magazines never showed him crying alone in a back alley. She did not let on that she knew who he was. She guessed he might appreciate that. Instead, she simply said, Matthew, let me help you get home. You shouldn't be out here. He looked around, as if just noticing he was in an alley. Then he checked his phone. Liz saw a flurry of missed calls and messages light up his screen. He frowned and turned the phone off. I have a driver, but I told him to leave. I wanted to be alone. Liz stood up and held out her hand. Come on. The ground is cold. I know of a small diner nearby that stays open late. Maybe you could sit down for a bit, get some warm tea or coffee. He hesitated, studying her face. Then he slowly reached out and let her pull him up. As he stood, Liz saw that he towered over her by almost a foot, yet he looked vulnerable, like a lost child. The idea of a millionaire needing someone's shoulder to cry on felt surreal to Liz, but heartbreak did not care about wealth. She led him down the alley. He followed silently, sniffling now and then. Liz tried to decide what she could possibly say to make him feel better, but found no words. Instead, she gave him a reassuring glance. They walked for about 10 minutes until they reached a small diner with flickering neon lights. The sign read Manny's Diner. It was the sort of place that served greasy burgers and watery coffee, but Liz had grown fond of its warm atmosphere and kind staff. She knew Manny, the owner, quite well. He always gave her a friendly nod whenever she came in. As they entered, a soft bell jingled above the door. A few people were scattered in booths, nursing late-night meals or cups of tea. The smell of fried onions and hot chocolate drifted through the air. Liz guided Matthew to a corner booth where she often liked to sit after her shift to rest her feet. Matthew sank into the seat, still wearing his rumpled suit. He stared at the table as though it might hold the answers to his heartbreak. Liz slid in across from him and watched him closely. "Can I get you something?" a waitress asked, approaching with a small notepad in hand. Liz recognized her as Beth, a woman in her 50s who was always quick to offer words of comfort. Beth's kind smile wavered when she saw Matthew's red-rimmed eyes. She looked to Liz, silently asking if everything was all right. Liz nodded. "We'd like some tea, please, and maybe a slice of pie for him," she added, hoping a bit of sweetness might help. Beth wrote down the order and left. The soft hum of conversations in the diner filled the space between them. For a while, Matthew said nothing. He kept his gaze down, occasionally glancing at his phone but not turning it on. "I'm sorry," he finally said, his voice low. "You must think I'm pathetic." Liz shook her head. "No, I don't. Everyone goes through something. The difference is most people hide it. You're not hiding it right now." Matthew gave a humorless laugh. "I guess not. Not after my bride decided she didn't want to marry me. Today was supposed to be a big day." He paused, his lips trembling. "My family was there. My closest friends. I waited at the altar, and she never showed." Liz felt her heart ache at his words. She could only imagine the humiliation and pain. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "Do you know why she left?" Matthew swallowed, his eyes shining with new tears. He rubbed his temples, trying to steady himself. "She texted me while I was standing there waiting. Said she realized she didn't love me enough to go through with it." He let out a shaky breath. "I guess it's better she was honest, but the timing, you know? Couldn't she have realized this before hundreds of guests gathered and my family flew in from all over?" Liz reached across the table and squeezed his hand. It felt cold. "It's hard to know what to say," she admitted, choosing her words carefully. But it's not your fault. Love sometimes ends in heartbreak, and it can be cruel." He pressed his lips together and said nothing. Just then, Beth returned with 2 steaming mugs of tea and a slice of apple pie. She set them down gently and gave Matthew a compassionate look. "Take your time," she said, "and if you need anything else, just let me know." Matthew managed a weak nod. He curled his hands around the warm mug, letting the heat seep into his fingers. Liz watched as he took a sip and closed his eyes for a moment, as though even that small comfort was a relief. She took a sip of her own tea, trying to think of how to help him. It was not every day she found a millionaire sobbing in an alley, let alone led him to a diner. She wondered if she should ask him about his family or if he needed to make some calls. But part of her sensed he needed a quiet space where he did not have to talk to his relatives or friends about what had just happened. "You don't have to explain yourself to me," Liz said, keeping her voice gentle. "I can just sit here if you want." Matthew opened his eyes and looked at her with a grateful expression. "Thank you," he said. "You're very kind. Most people would probably try to sell this story to the tabloids or something." Liz gave a little laugh, shaking her head. "That's not my style. And besides, who would believe me? They'd think I made it up for attention." He gazed at her for a moment, as if truly seeing her for the first time. "You're different." They sat in companionable silence for a while, sipping their tea. Outside, the wind rattled the windows, and a few passing cars flashed their headlights across the diner's worn floor. Bit by bit, Matthew calmed down. He ate a bite of pie, and Liz could tell he was trying to push down his pain, at least for the moment. After a while, he cleared his throat. "So, do you live around here?" he asked, sounding hesitant, as if he knew it was a normal question but felt strange asking it in this context. Liz nodded. "Yeah, a few blocks away. I take this alley as a shortcut. Not the safest route, but after a long day at work I just want to get home." "Work?" he echoed, glancing at her name tag. She had forgotten to remove it. It read Liz. "Where do you work?" he asked. She shrugged. "I'm a cashier at a grocery store and a caretaker. Nothing fancy, but it pays the bills. Or at least tries to. What about you?" She gave him a small smile, pretending she did not know about young industries. Maybe he would appreciate just talking like normal people. He let out a breath. "I run a company. My father started it. I've been in charge for about 2 years now. It's been stressful. Good, but stressful." Liz nodded, sipping her tea. "I see. Well, you're probably good at it, or else you wouldn't be in charge, right?" He gave her a faint smile. "I hope so. My father told me it's not just about making money, it's about leading people. Sometimes I wonder if I've lost sight of that." She studied him, seeing how worn out he looked. Her heart went out to him. "Maybe you just need a moment to breathe," she offered. "This heartbreak, it's terrible. But maybe it'll give you a chance to slow down and figure out what you really want." Matthew looked down at his tea again, nodding. "You're probably right. It's just hard to face everyone right now. The pity in their eyes, the questions." Liz reached out and gently touched his hand again. "Tonight you don't have to face them. You can just be a person, hurting, who needs a cup of tea in a quiet diner." He looked at her, and something in his gaze shifted from pure sorrow to a mix of gratitude and curiosity. He gave a small nod.
"Yes, that would be nice."
They stayed like that for a while longer, 2 strangers sharing a quiet booth in Manny's diner. A single tear escaped from Matthew's eye, but he wiped it away quickly. Liz pretended not to notice, giving him the dignity he deserved. When they finally left the diner, it was close to midnight. The city lights glittered in the distance, and the wind had grown colder. Liz walked beside Matthew, her hands tucked into her coat pockets. He shoved his hands in his trouser pockets, fiddling with his unused phone. Every now and then it seemed like he wanted to switch it on, but he held back. "I can call you a cab if you'd like," Liz offered. "Or you could call your driver." Matthew hesitated. I guess I should. But would you mind if I walked you home first? It's late, and I don't want you going by yourself. She opened her mouth to protest, then saw how serious he was. Despite his heartbreak, he wanted to make sure she got home safely. She relented. All right, she said, giving him a small nod. They walked through the dark streets, streetlights casting shadows on the sidewalk. The buildings around them were old and worn down, with chipped paint and broken windows. Liz noticed Matthew taking in the surroundings. She wondered if he had ever been in this part of town before. They passed by a group of rowdy teenagers hanging out near a closed shop. Liz felt uneasy, but Matthew kept close to her, and they did not cause trouble. Further along, they saw a stray cat dart across the road, its tail high and proud. The little details of the night seemed to soothe Matthew, or at least distract him from his thoughts. Eventually, they arrived at Liz's apartment building. It was a tall, shabby structure with peeling walls in the hallway. The lights in the lobby flickered, and the elevator was often broken. Liz never liked inviting people here, because it showed how tight her finances were, but she swallowed her pride. She had nothing to hide. "Thank you for walking me home," she said, turning to face him at the entrance. "I hope you get some rest tonight." Matthew gave her a weary smile. "Thank you for everything. For talking to me, for hugging me in that alley." He hesitated, then continued, "I'm not sure how to properly thank you. My life feels upside down, but you were there for me." Liz shrugged. "I just did what anyone with a heart would do." He studied her face again. "You'd be surprised how many people wouldn't. May I ask, can I have your number? Not for anything strange, I promise. I might need a friend to talk to, and I'd like to make sure you're okay too." Liz felt her stomach flutter. It was not every day a wealthy man asked for her number, but she saw the sincerity in his eyes, so she carefully wrote her phone number on a scrap of paper. "Here," she said. "Feel free to text me, if you ever need someone to talk to or to share a cup of tea with again." He nodded, taking the paper and slipping it into his jacket pocket. "Thank you, Liz." With that, he stepped back, pulling out his phone. She saw him finally switch it on. The screen lit up, and she was sure there were many messages and calls. She did not linger, wanting to give him privacy. So she stepped through the lobby doors and waved goodbye. As she rode the elevator up to her apartment, her thoughts whirled. It was such an odd night. She had comforted a crying millionaire, a groom left at the altar. She could still picture the tears on his face. She felt sorry for him, but she also felt a strange warmth at how he had insisted on walking her home. When she reached her apartment, her younger sister Marissa was already asleep. Liz tiptoed into her tiny room, changed into pajamas, and lay in bed. She could not stop thinking about Matthew. She wondered if he was okay, if he had managed to get a cab, or if he was now facing his family's questions. Eventually, she drifted off to sleep, her dreams filled with images of a sorrowful man in a wrinkled suit. The next morning, Liz woke early to start her caretaker job. She was tired but determined. She splashed water on her face and reminded herself that she had bills to pay, so she needed to keep going. As she left the apartment, she glanced at her phone, half expecting to see a message from Matthew, but there was nothing. Her day passed in a haze of routine tasks. She helped Mrs. Wallace, an elderly woman in her 80s, bathe, eat her meals, and do light exercises recommended by her doctor. Wallace was sweet, always asking Liz about her own life. Liz smiled and shrugged off the questions, not wanting to explain the strange events of the previous night. By mid-afternoon, Liz headed to the grocery store for her shift. She manned the cash register, scanning items for impatient customers. Her mind drifted to Matthew. She replayed his words, his tears, and the haunted look in his eyes. She wondered if he was feeling any better, or if the reality of being left at the altar was hitting him harder now. The hours crept by. The store was busy, and she did not have time to check her phone often. When she finally did during a short break, she found a single text message from an unknown number. Her heart skipped a beat. It read, "Hi Liz, it's Matthew. Thank you again for last night. I'm sorry if this is weird, but I wanted to say you really helped me. I still feel horrible, but knowing there's someone out there who was kind enough to hug me in an alley, it means a lot. Thank you. Also, I hope you're having a good day. Please take care." She smiled at her phone, relief washing over her. He was still hurting, but he had reached out. She typed back a short reply. "Hey Matthew, I'm glad you messaged. I'm sorry you're going through such a tough time. If you ever need a break or want someone to talk to, just text. I'm at work right now, but I'll be free later. Hang in there." She sent it, feeling a mix of concern and a small flicker of excitement. She tried to push that excitement away. He was a heartbroken man, and she was just an average person trying to make ends meet. She did not want to get carried away by any fantasies, but she could not deny there was a certain warmth growing in her chest. The rest of her shift went smoothly, and she headed home late in the evening. Her sister was out with friends, so Liz had the apartment to herself. She sank onto the couch, exhaustion pressing down on her. Her phone buzzed. "Matthew, would you mind meeting me for a coffee tomorrow? I'd like to thank you properly. You can pick the place." Liz hesitated, biting her lip. She thought about her finances. She knew a fancy coffee shop was probably his usual style, but he was letting her choose. She did not want to take advantage of his generosity. She typed back, "Sure. There's a small coffee shop near the grocery store called Rosie's Cafe. Nothing fancy, but they have the best muffins in town. How about 9 a.m.? He replied almost instantly, "Sounds perfect. See you at 9. Liz felt butterflies in her stomach. She reminded herself not to expect too much. He might just need someone talked to. That was all. The next morning, Liz arrived at Rosie's Cafe a few minutes early. She wore a simple outfit, a comfortable sweater and jeans, and she had combed her hair neatly. She was not one to fuss with makeup or expensive clothes. She had neither the time nor the money for that. Rosie's Cafe was a cozy spot with floral wallpaper and a glass display case filled with fresh pastries. The aroma of brewed coffee and cinnamon filled the air. Liz found a small table by the window and waited, tapping her fingers nervously against her mug. She wondered if Matthew would arrive in a limousine or if he would come in quietly, wearing another expensive suit. At precisely 9 a.m., he walked through the door. He wore a tailored black suit jacket over a crisp white shirt, but he had no tie, giving him a slightly relaxed look. He spotted Liz and gave her a tentative smile, walking over to join her. "You made it," Liz said, standing up for a moment. He nodded, taking in the cafe's modest charm. "It's nice here," he said, sounding genuine. "I can see why you like it." They sat down, and a friendly barista came over. Matthew ordered a cappuccino, and Liz stuck with her usual black coffee. They also got 2 muffins blueberry for her and chocolate chip for him. When the barista left, Matthew leaned back in his chair. "How are you?" he asked softly, as though her well-being mattered to him. Liz felt a small wave of warmth at his question. "I'm fine. I had work until late last night, but that's normal for me." He nodded, his gaze shifting to the window, where morning sunlight was streaming in. "I spoke to my parents," he said after a moment, his tone heavy. "They're devastated, but they're trying to be supportive. My father especially is angry at the situation. He thinks my ex-her name is Vanessa was irresponsible and selfish. I suppose he has a right to be upset." Liz took a sip of her coffee, wanting to choose her words carefully. "How do you feel, hearing that from your father?" Matthew sighed. "He's always been protective of me, but hearing him rage against Vanessa doesn't really help. I'm still heartbroken. Part of me wants to hate her, but Mostly, I'm just sad. I loved her. Or I thought I did. Liz reached across the small table, resting her hand on his arm briefly. It's okay to feel sad. You don't have to hide that. He gave her a grateful look. Thank you. You're the only person who has told me it's okay to just be sad without also telling me to move on or do something drastic. My friends are all about partying to forget or going on a vacation, but I don't feel like doing that. Their muffins arrived, and they took a moment to enjoy them. Liz noticed Matthew savoring the chocolate chip muffin as though it was a rare treat. She wondered if, for all his money, he ever just sat in a small cafe and enjoyed a simple pastry. You know, she said, wiping a crumb from the corner of her mouth, it's good to have a support system, but you need to heal in your own way. If you're not ready to forget or move on, don't force it. Sometimes, you have to face the pain before it can fade. Matthew's eyes flickered with appreciation. That's wise. I wish I had learned that a long time ago. They spent the next hour talking about random things. Liz told him a bit about her caretaker job, how Mrs. Wallace had once tried to set her up with her grandson, who was much older than Liz had realized. Matthew laughed at the story, and Liz found she liked the sound of his laughter. It was a warm, genuine sound that made him look younger and less burdened. He, in turn, told her about the different parts of his company. He admitted he felt overwhelmed sometimes, responsible for thousands of employees. He confided that he worried he was not doing enough to make sure they were happy at work. Liz listened, offering small suggestions on how a boss could show appreciation to employees' little gestures like staff appreciation days or personal thank you notes. You know, Matthew said, sipping the last of his cappuccino, I haven't felt this relaxed in a long time. Talking with you is easy. It's strange, because we come from such different worlds. Liz shrugged. We're both human. We both know pain. A gentle smile spread across his face. Yes, you're right. Over the next week, Liz and Matthew kept in touch. They exchanged texts, sometimes late into the night. He shared how he was dealing with the fallout from the canceled wedding, and she told him about her daily challenges at work. It felt natural to confide in each other. Liz looked forward to his messages, although she tried to keep her expectations low. Then one evening, as Liz was finishing her shift at the grocery store, she got a call from Matthew. She stepped outside, away from the bustle of customers, and answered in a quiet corner. Hey, she greeted him, trying to keep her voice steady. Hi, Matthew said. She could sense a hint of excitement in his tone. I hope this isn't too sudden, but there's a charity event my company is hosting tomorrow night. It's a formal gala, and I'm sort of expected to be there. I was wondering if you'd consider going with me. As a friend, of course, he added quickly. Liz's heart pounded. A formal gala? She could not picture herself in that world. She did not own a fancy dress or heels. He was silent for a moment. I understand. But you've been kind to me, and I don't want to go alone. I promise I'll cover anything you need, the dress, the shoes, whatever. If you're uncomfortable, I won't force you. But it would mean a lot to have you there. Just someone I trust. Liz leaned against the wall of the store, chewing her lip. She thought about how nerve-wracking it would be, walking into a high-society event. She also thought about Matthew standing there alone, under the gaze of people who might pity him or gossip about his lost wedding. She pictured him, still fragile, trying to keep a brave face. Okay, she said softly. I'll go with you. Relief flooded his voice. Thank you, Liz. I'll text you the details and arrange for a car to pick you up. Is that all right? She let out a shaky laugh. A car to pick me up, this is so new to me, but sure. Let's do it. They said their goodbyes, and Liz hung up the phone. Her mind swirled with worry. She knew she had nothing to wear that would be suitable for a gala. She also worried about being judged by Matthew's social circle. But she reminded herself that she was doing this because she cared about him as a friend. He needed someone in his corner. Perhaps that was reason enough. The next day, Liz worked a half shift, then rushed home to get ready. She did not have time or money to buy a gown on her own, so she was both relieved and anxious when a package arrived from Matthew's personal assistant. Inside was a beautiful, understated navy blue dress. It had a modest neckline and flowed elegantly down to her ankles. There were also a pair of matching heels and a small clutch bag. Liz stared at the items, her heart pounding with gratitude and nervousness. She had never owned anything so fine. She tried the dress on and found it fit surprisingly well. She pinned her hair up, carefully following an online tutorial, and applied a bit of subtle makeup. Standing in front of the mirror, she hardly recognized herself. Marissa, who was home for once, whistled in admiration. "Wow, Liz, you look like you stepped out of a magazine. Where are you going?" Liz hesitated, then decided it would be easier to tell her sister the truth. "I'm going to a charity gala with a friend," she said. He's from a wealthy family." Marissa's eyes widened. "A friend? You've been holding out on me." Liz blushed. "It's nothing like that. He's just a friend who went through something rough. I'm helping him out." Her sister arched an eyebrow. "Sure you are, but I see that sparkle in your eye. You like him, don't you?" Liz felt her cheeks flush deeper. I don't know," she whispered. "He's kind, and we have a connection, but he's also heartbroken. I don't want to confuse things." Marissa stepped forward and gave her sister a gentle hug. "Whatever this is, just be you. That's the best advice I can give." A car horn sounded from outside, and Liz knew her ride had arrived. She grabbed the clutch and headed downstairs, her heart fluttering with a mix of excitement and trepidation. Outside, a sleek black car was parked by the curb. The driver stepped out, gave her a polite greeting, and held the door open for her. She tried to contain her nerves as she slipped inside. The drive to the hotel, where the gala was being held, felt long. Liz stared out the window at the passing city lights, thinking about how much her life had changed in a few days. She had gone from hugging a crying stranger in an alley to attending a high-society event on his arm. She inhaled, trying to calm the fluttering in her stomach. When the car pulled up to the grand entrance of the hotel, she saw other expensive cars dropping off elegantly dressed guests. Liz smoothed the skirt of her dress and stepped out with as much poise as she could muster. Her eyes scanned the crowd, and then she saw Matthew. He stood by the entrance, dressed in a tailored tuxedo. He looked striking, though Liz noticed a hint of apprehension in his posture. He caught sight of her, and his eyes softened. He took a few steps forward, offering his arm. "You look amazing," he said in a low voice. Liz felt warmth bloom in her cheeks. "Thank you. You look very handsome." She looped her arm through his, and they walked inside. Inside, the gala was in full swing. Crystal chandeliers glittered above, and soft classical music played from a small orchestra set up by the stage. Tables were draped in white cloth, each adorned with tall flower centerpieces. Men in tuxedos mingled with women in glamorous dresses. Waiters weaved through the crowd, offering champagne and hors d'oeuvre on silver trays. Liz felt overwhelmed, but Matthew guided her gently, greeting a few people here and there. Some recognized him, of course, and she saw pity flash in their eyes. No doubt they knew about the canceled wedding. Liz squeezed Matthew's arm, offering silent support. He introduced her to a few of his colleagues, calling her a dear friend who's helped me through a hard time. It was clear many of them expected to see him with a woman from their social circle, not an ordinary cashier in a borrowed dress. A short, balding man approached them, his expression sympathetic. "Matthew, my boy," he said, clapping him on the shoulder. "You're a brave one to show up tonight. How are you holding up?" Matthew stiffened slightly, then forced a polite smile. "I'm doing okay, Mr. Clark. Thank you for asking. This is Liz." Mr. Clark gave Liz a once-over, then a tight smile. "Nice to meet you." He turned back to Matthew. "Well, if you need anything, let me know." As he walked away, Liz let out a small breath. "They're all staring," she whispered to Matthew. He nodded, a muscle working in his jaw. "They're mostly curious." She tried to relax, remembering she was here for Matthew's sake. So, Matthew brightened a little. "It's a fundraiser for an organization that supports education for underprivileged youth in the city. My father started it years ago. We raise money for scholarships, school supplies, and mentorship programs." Liz felt genuine admiration. "That's wonderful. So all these people donate to help kids go to school?" He nodded. "Yes. We also have an auction later tonight. Usually, items like artwork or vacation packages get auctioned off. The money goes to the charity." She was about to reply when a tall woman in a red gown swept up to them. She wore diamond earrings and a matching necklace, and her eyes flickered to Liz before focusing on Matthew. "Darling, it's so good to see you," she said, leaning in to air-kiss both of his cheeks. Liz recognized her from magazine covers. Juliet Davenport, a famous socialite. Matthew forced another polite smile. "Hello, Juliet. I hope you're well." She gave him a sympathetic look. "I heard about your unfortunate situation. I'm so sorry. And who is your friend?" she asked, not bothering to hide her interest in Liz. Matthew's grip on Liz's arm tightened slightly. "This is Liz," he said. "She's my guest tonight." Juliet's red lips curved into a sweet but slightly condescending smile. "How lovely. Well, enjoy the event. If you need a shoulder to cry on," she said to Matthew, "I'm always here." With that, Juliet turned and floated away into the crowd. Liz exhaled. Matthew's expression was stony. "Yes, that's why I'm glad you're here." After some mingling, dinner was served. Liz found herself seated next to Matthew at a round table with a few other business associates. The meal was an elegant affair roast lamb, seasoned vegetables, and a creamy soup starter. Liz tried to keep up, nodding politely when addressed, but she felt out of place. Matthew sensed her discomfort and leaned over occasionally to explain references or inside jokes. She appreciated his effort, feeling the warmth of his breath against her ear. Every so often he reached under the table to give her hand a quick, reassuring squeeze. His touch was gentle, but it sent a spark through her heart each time. When the meal ended, the tables were cleared for the dance floor. The orchestra struck up a lively tune and elegantly dressed couples began to sway in unison. Liz watched them, feeling a pang of anxiety. She was not a skilled dancer, especially not at this level of formal dancing. Matthew turned to her, a hint of shyness in his gaze. "Would you like to dance?" he asked. She hesitated but then nodded. She did not want to leave him alone. "Okay." He led her to the floor. The music was a slow waltz. He placed one hand on her waist and took her other hand in his. At first, she felt stiff, but he gave her a comforting smile. "Relax," he said gently. "Just—" She tried, letting the soft melody guide her. She looked up into his eyes. They still held a sadness, but also a new light, as if a small part of him was finding solace in this moment. She allowed herself to enjoy the closeness, the gentle sway, and the safety of his arm around her. As they danced, the room seemed to fade away. She forgot the stares from the other guests, the pitying looks, and even Juliet Davenport's pointed smile. She felt only Matthew's presence, his warmth, and the steady beat of the music. For a moment, it was as though they were the only two people there. After the dance ended, they stepped off the floor. Matthew guided her back to their table, and they chatted quietly. More dances followed, and eventually a spotlight turned to the stage for the auction. People bid on various items, raising funds for the education charity. Matthew, as a major sponsor, was called up to say a few words. Liz watched him speak, noticing how poised he seemed, even with the heartbreak he must still be carrying. When he returned to her side, there was a renewed respect in some of the gazes from around the room. It was as though they remembered why he was influential in the first place. He truly cared about giving back. Liz felt proud of him, though she tried to hide it. She reminded herself that she was just a friend, someone who had stumbled into his life at a vulnerable moment. The gala ended late, and Matthew escorted Liz back to the waiting car. She leaned against the leather seat, her feet aching from the unfamiliar heels. He slid in beside her, resting his head back as the driver pulled away. The city lights blurred outside the window. They were both silent for a while, exhausted from the evening. "Thank you," Matthew finally said, turning to her. "I couldn't have done that alone." Liz smiled gently. "You did all the hard work up there. I just followed your lead." He shook his head. "No, you were there. You gave me confidence, even if you didn't realize it." She felt a flutter of emotion at his words. "I'm glad," she whispered. They exchanged a soft look, and for a moment, Liz wondered if he might lean in and kiss her. A small part of her heart pounded at the thought. But he seemed to catch himself, perhaps remembering the pain of his recent heartbreak. Instead, he reached for her hand and gave it a light squeeze. The car dropped Liz at her apartment building first. Matthew stepped out with her, ignoring her protests. He walked her to the door, his hand lingering on hers. She felt an urge to invite him up, but she realized it might send the wrong signal. Besides, she did not think he wanted to face her cramped, humble apartment just now. "Good night," he said, his voice husky with weariness and something else she could not name. "Good night," Liz replied. "Get some rest." He nodded, then turned to re-enter the car. She watched him go, feeling a strange mix of longing and concern swirl in her chest. She could not deny she was developing feelings for him, but she reminded herself he was still healing. If she rushed into anything, it might only complicate matters. She climbed the steps to her apartment, slipped off her heels, and sank onto her bed. She was too awake to sleep, her mind buzzing with the memories of the night. Eventually, she dozed off, the taste of possibility lingering on her lips. In the weeks that followed, Liz and Matthew fell into an easy pattern of friendship. They met for coffee or dinner when their schedules allowed. Sometimes he would pick her up, other times they would meet halfway at a modest restaurant. They talked about everything: his work challenges, her daily struggles, and random topics that made them laugh. Matthew still had moments of sadness. Liz could tell he was reminded often of the canceled wedding, especially when he encountered old acquaintances who had not heard the news. But he began to smile more freely, and his eyes lost some of their haunted look. He even told her he had started therapy to deal with his heartbreak, which she applauded. Meanwhile, Liz felt her feelings for him deepen. She saw his gentle nature, the way he truly cared about others. He was not just a businessman. He was also a person who enjoyed small jokes, who found pleasure in a good cup of tea, who got nervous about letting people down. In turn, he expressed interest in her life, her dreams, and her fears. Sometimes, he would text her late at night to share a random thought or a funny moment. She found herself smiling at her phone like a teenager. Despite this closeness, neither of them brought up the topic of romance. Liz believed Matthew needed more time to heal. She did not want to be a rebound. And she sensed he was holding back, perhaps unsure if he was ready for another relationship. So they remained in that sweet but uncertain space between friendship and something more. One evening, they decided to watch a movie at Matthew's penthouse. It was the first time Liz would see his home. She felt a bit nervous as she arrived. The doorman welcomed her by name, likely informed by Matthew. She rode the private elevator up. When the doors opened, she stepped into a spacious living area with floor-to-ceiling windows. The city skyline sparkled below. The furniture was modern yet comfortable-looking, and the walls were adorned with tasteful artwork. The air smelled faintly of something citrus, and soft music played in the background. Matthew emerged from the kitchen area, wearing casual clothes, a simple sweater, and jeans. He smiled warmly. "Hey, glad you made it. I ordered pizza and popcorn. I know it's not exactly gourmet, but I wanted something normal." Liz laughed, feeling more at ease. "That sounds perfect." They settled onto a plush sofa, pizza box on the table in front of them, popcorn in a big bowl. Matthew selected a light-hearted comedy. Throughout the movie, they laughed and commented, tossing popcorn at each other in moments of silliness. Liz felt a cozy warmth spread through her. She was in a millionaire's penthouse, yet it felt comfortable, like hanging out with a longtime friend. Halfway through the movie, Matthew paused it. "I forgot the soda," he announced, standing up to grab a couple of cans from the kitchen. Liz took the chance to glance around the living room more thoroughly. She spotted a photograph on a side table. It was Matthew with a woman who must have been Vanessa. They were smiling in a garden, looking happy and in love. Liz felt a pang in her chest. She quickly looked away, not wanting to pry into his personal belongings. But the image lingered in her mind. She wondered how much it still hurt him to see that photo every day. She also wondered if she was foolish to hope he might ever see her as something more than a kind friend. He returned with the drinks, handing her one. She thanked him, and they resumed the movie. After the credits rolled, they talked lazily, the city lights twinkling behind them. The conversation drifted from the film to life philosophies, to random jokes. They discovered they had different tastes in music, enjoyed classical piano pieces as well as pop hits, while she was more into acoustic folk. At some point, the topic turned serious. Matthew's gaze shifted to the skyline. "Do you ever feel like life throws something at you to force you to rethink everything?" he asked, his voice quiet. Liz nodded, thinking of her parents' death when she was younger. "Yes. Losing my parents when I was a teenager made me rethink everything. It made me grow up fast and appreciate small acts of kindness. That's why I couldn't ignore you that night in the alley." He swallowed, looking a bit emotional. "I'm sorry about your parents, and I'm so grateful you found me that night. It still feels surreal." She set her empty soda can on the table. "What about you? Are you rethinking everything now?" He sighed. "Yes. For a while, I thought my life was all set: marry Vanessa, expand the company, maybe have a family. But now I'm looking at the pieces of that plan, and I'm not sure which parts I really wanted and which parts were just expectations." Liz studied him carefully. "So, what do you truly want, Matthew?" He turned to face her, his expression a mix of longing and uncertainty. "That's the question, isn't it?" He hesitated, then continued, "I know I want to keep making a difference through my company. I also know I don't want to be alone. I want to share my life with someone who genuinely cares, someone who sees me for who I am, not for my money or status." Their eyes locked for a moment. Liz felt her heart skip a beat. Before she could say anything, Matthew looked away, breaking the spell. "It's late," he said softly, glancing at the time. "Let me call my driver to take you home." Liz nodded, feeling the unspoken tension between them. She knew there was something more behind his words, but neither of them was quite ready to take that step. She gathered her things, thanking him for the evening. As she stepped into the elevator, she caught one last glimpse of him standing by the window, silhouetted against the city lights, looking like a man standing on the brink of a new life. A few days later, Liz noticed Matthew's mood had darkened again. His texts became shorter, and he stopped suggesting they meet. She worried he might be slipping back into despair. After several attempts to reach him, he finally called and asked if she could come to his office. She arrived at the towering building of Young Industries, feeling dwarfed by its grandeur. The lobby was all glass and polished marble. After checking in with reception, she took an elevator up to the top floor, where Matthew's office was located. When she stepped out, she was greeted by a chic assistant who led her to a sleek waiting area. Matthew's door opened, and he appeared, looking tired. "Liz," he said, his voice low, "come in." She followed him into a spacious office with a view that stretched over the city. He closed the door, sighing as he gestured for her to sit on a leather couch. He took a seat beside her, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. "What's wrong?" she asked gently, placing a hand on his back. He closed his eyes briefly. "Vanessa reached out," he said. "She wants to talk." Liz felt her heart lurch. "Did she say why?" He shrugged, a trace of bitterness creeping into his voice. "She said she's been thinking about what happened and wants to see if we can find closure or fix things." His eyes flicked to Liz, then away. "I'm confused. Part of me wants to tell her to get lost. Another part of me wonders if I should at least hear her out." Liz swallowed the tightness in her throat. She knew this moment might come, but it did not make it any easier to face. "You have a right to your feelings," she said softly. "But ask yourself if hearing her out will help you heal, or if it will just stir up more pain." He rubbed his temples. "I don't know. I'm supposed to meet her tonight." Liz felt her stomach twist. It made sense that he would meet with his former fiancée, but she could not deny the pang of jealousy and fear that rose within her. "Do what feels right for you," she said. "But remember how she left you at the altar. That kind of hurt doesn't go away easily." He nodded, turning his face to her, his eyes searching hers. "Thank you for coming." Her heart fluttered. She patted his hand gently. "I'm here. Just be careful." That evening, Liz tried to distract herself by watching a movie at home with her sister. But she could not focus on the plot. Her mind kept drifting to Matthew. She pictured him meeting Vanessa, seeing the woman he had once loved, the one who had shattered his heart. Would he forgive her? Would he realize he still loved her? Or would he come away more hurt than before? Hours passed with no word. Around midnight, Liz's phone buzzed. She jumped, fumbling to answer it. "Hello?" she said, trying to keep her voice calm. "It's me," Matthew said. He sounded drained. Can I see you? I'm parked outside your building." Liz's pulse raced. She quickly changed into something decent and told her sister she was stepping out for a moment. Rushing downstairs, she found him leaning against his car, still in his work clothes. The look on his face made her chest tighten. She approached quietly, and he pulled her into a hug. She felt the tension in his body. He smelled of cologne and sadness. Finally, he pulled back, exhaling a shaky breath. "Do you want to talk about it?" she asked softly. He nodded and gestured to the car. "Can we drive somewhere? I need to clear my head." Liz slipped into the passenger seat, and Matthew started the engine. They drove aimlessly through the city, passing quiet streets and neon-lit blocks. Finally, they parked at a viewpoint overlooking the river. The water shimmered under moonlight, and the city skyline spread before them. Matthew sighed, resting his head against the seat. "I met her at a small cafe. She apologized, said she panicked on our wedding day, realized she wasn't ready for marriage. She claimed it wasn't about me or my family, just her own fear. Now she thinks maybe she made a mistake and wants to see if there's still a chance." Liz's stomach churned, but she maintained a calm exterior. "What did you say?" He rubbed the steering wheel, his knuckles white. "I told her I didn't know, because that's the truth. I'm still angry. I'm still hurt, but a part of me does miss what we had. Even though I've changed since that day, I'm not the same man who stood at the altar." Liz stared at the river, her heart pounding. "So what do you plan to do?" He turned to her, eyes glistening. "I wanted to talk to you first. Is that selfish? You're the one who's been here for me through all of this. I need your perspective." Liz forced a swallow. "I can't tell you what to do, but I can tell you how I feel. I think, if you genuinely believe you and Vanessa can build a healthy relationship, maybe it's worth a conversation. But remember that she hurt you in the worst way. Make sure she's truly ready this time, and not just regretting the consequences of her actions." Matthew nodded, letting out a shaky breath. "That's the thing. I don't know if I can trust her. And there's someone else who's been on my mind. Someone who saw me at my lowest and never judged me." Liz's heart skipped. She looked at him, her eyes reflecting the moonlight. He reached over, brushing a lock of hair from her face. His touch lingered on her cheek. "I don't want to lose you," he said softly. "But I also don't want to jump into something when I'm still confused." She felt tears burning the back of her eyes. "I understand," she whispered. "Take your time. Figure out what you truly want. I'll be your friend, no matter what." He closed his eyes, and a single tear escaped, trailing down his cheek. She leaned over and hugged him, just as she had that night in the alley. He held on tight, like he was afraid she might slip away. Over the next few days, Liz lived in a state of tension. She and Matthew still texted, but there was a heaviness in their conversations. Vanessa was in the picture now, wanting reconciliation, and Matthew was torn. Liz encouraged him to follow his heart, but part of her secretly hoped his heart would lead him to her. She hated the jealousy and anxiety she felt. She reminded herself that Matthew had every right to talk to his ex. But at times, she had to fight back tears, imagining they might patch things up and get back together. She told herself that even if that happened, she had lived without him before, and she could do it again. Yet the thought cut deep. One evening, as Liz walked home from her caretaker job, her phone rang. She saw an unknown number on the screen, but she answered, thinking it might be a new client. "Hello?" she said. A woman's voice came through, cool and crisp. "Is this Liz?" Liz frowned. "Yes, this is she. Who's calling?" There was a pause. "It's Vanessa. Vanessa Cole." Liz's heart stammered. "Oh, hi." Her mind raced, wondering how Vanessa had gotten her number. "I hope you don't mind that I found your number," Vanessa said. She sounded polite but guarded. "I just wanted to talk to you, woman to woman, about Matthew." Liz clenched her phone, stepping off to the side of the sidewalk so she would not be in anyone's way. "I'm listening," Vanessa sighed. "Look, I'm aware Matthew has been spending time with you. I know you helped him after the wedding day fiasco. I'm grateful for that, really. But I also think I deserve a chance to fix my mistakes with him. We had a history together, and I believe he still loves me." Liz bit her lip. She kept her voice level, despite her pounding heart. "That's between you and Matthew. I'm not interfering in his decision." Vanessa hesitated. "I know he's confused, and I know you care about him. I just want you to consider that if you truly care about him, maybe you'll let him figure things out without trying to influence him. I don't mean to sound harsh, but I'm trying to do what's right." Liz closed her eyes, forcing calm. "Matthew is free to choose what he wants. I've never forced him to do anything." Vanessa's tone softened. "Yes, of course, I didn't mean to accuse you. I want him back, Liz, and I'll do whatever it takes to show him I won't run again." The call ended shortly after, leaving Liz shaken. She replayed the conversation in her mind, feeling anger and hurt. Yet a tiny part of her understood Vanessa's desperation. She ended up walking home in a daze, unsure how to process it all. A night of confessions. The next day, Liz tried to act normal at work, but her thoughts were scattered. Around lunchtime, Matthew showed up at the grocery store. She was on her break, sitting outside on a bench. He approached carefully, wearing a casual blazer and looking tired. "Hey," he said softly, sitting next to her on the bench. She turned to him, attempting a small smile. "Hey, how are you?" He shook his head, letting out a heavy sigh. "I'm torn. Vanessa keeps calling, wanting me to give us another chance. She's apologetic, talking about love and destiny. And then there's you. You who've shown me genuine kindness from the start." Liz felt tears prickle. She swallowed hard. "Matthew, you know I care about you, but I won't force you to choose me. You have to decide based on what you truly want." He studied her face. "Vanessa left me standing at the altar, but we had years of history before that. You came into my life at my darkest moment. You saw me at my worst and didn't run away." His voice shook slightly. "I'm afraid of making the wrong choice." Liz reached out and took his hand. "It's not about right or wrong," she said gently. "It's about what will help you grow, heal, and be happy." He nodded slowly, tears gathering at the corners of his eyes. "I'm going to meet with Vanessa one more time tonight. She wants to show me something that she says will prove she's serious. Then I'll make my decision." Liz's heart ached, but she nodded. "Okay, I'll be here, whatever happens." He leaned forward, pressing a soft kiss to her forehead. Her eyes closed at the warmth of his lips. The moment was tender, but also tinged with sadness. Then he stood, gave her hand one last squeeze, and walked away. Liz watched him go, her mind a battlefield of hope and dread. That evening, Liz sat by her phone, waiting in a swirl of anxiety. She tried to distract herself with a book, but the words blurred on the page. Marissa hovered nearby, offering silent support. The tension in the apartment felt like a heavy cloud. Time ticked on. 10 p.m., 11 p.m., midnight. No call. Liz's heart thundered in her chest. Finally, at almost 1 in the morning, her phone rang. She snatched it up. It was Matthew. "Liz," he said, his voice tight with emotion. "Can I come over?" She exhaled shakily. "Yes, of course." Minutes later, she heard a knock at the door. She opened it to find Matthew standing there, eyes red as if he had been crying. Without a word, he came in and pulled her into a tight hug. She felt him trembling, and she wrapped her arms around him, guiding him to the small living room. Marissa, understanding the situation, slipped away to her bedroom, giving them privacy. Liz led Matthew to the couch, where they sat. She handed him a glass of water, which he sipped before setting it down with a shaky hand. He looked at her, tears shining in his eyes. "I can't go back to Vanessa," he said softly. "She tried to win me over with promises, gifts, an elaborate plan to make amends, but I realized something. I no longer trust her. It's not just about her leaving me at the altar. It's about everything since then. She cared more about saving face than truly understanding the pain she caused." Liz felt her heart pound. "I'm sorry," she whispered, placing a hand on his arm. He shook his head. "Don't be. Because while she was trying to convince me, I kept thinking about you, the way you hugged me, no questions asked, in that cold alley. The way you've listened to me, made me laugh, and never judged me. I realized I have feelings for you, Liz." Her breath caught in her throat. He reached for her hand, intertwining their fingers. "I know I've been a mess. I know I'm still healing. But I can't ignore the truth. You're the one I want beside me. If you'll have me, that is." Liz felt tears slip down her cheeks, a wave of relief and joy washing over her. She cupped his face gently. "Matthew, I've been so worried." He closed his eyes, leaning into her touch. They stayed like that for a moment, holding each other, letting the weight of the decision settle in. Then he opened his eyes and gave a watery smile. "Is it okay if I kiss you?" Liz's heart soared. "Yes," she breathed. His lips met hers in a gentle, tentative kiss, that quickly deepened as they poured all their unspoken emotion into it. The moment was both tender and electrifying, a promise of a future born from heartbreak and kindness. From that night on, Liz and Matthew began a relationship built on trust and understanding. It was not always smooth sailing. Matthew still had flashbacks of the wedding that never happened. Liz had her own insecurities, worried she might not fit into his world. But they communicated openly, sharing fears and doubts. They found balance by making space for each other's lives. Liz did not quit her jobs right away, even though Matthew offered to help. She wanted to keep her independence and contribute. He respected her choice, seeing how important it was for her sense of self. They had dinners where he introduced her to friends and associates. At first, some of them were skeptical, but over time, they saw that Liz brought genuine warmth and grounding to Matthew's life. Meanwhile, Liz introduced him to her sister, her friends, and even Mrs. Wallace, who adored him. He fit into her world, surprising them all with his humility and willingness to help. One afternoon, Liz invited Matthew to join her on a volunteering day at a local shelter. He rolled up his sleeves. She watched him smile and chat with strangers who recognized neither his face nor his wealth. In that moment, she felt a surge of love for this man who cared so deeply. Their bond grew stronger as they faced challenges together. One day, Liz came home upset because her paycheck was incorrect, and her manager refused to fix it. Matthew offered to call the store's owner, but Liz asked him not to intervene. She handled the problem herself. As the weeks turned into months, they settled into a rhythm. They laughed at silly jokes, supported each other on bad days, and found joy in simple pleasures, whether it was a walk in the park or a late-night talk about hopes and dreams. Matthew continued therapy, working through his leftover pain. Liz was proud of him for taking care of his mental health. One rainy evening, about 6 months after they first met, Matthew invited Liz over to his penthouse. She arrived dripping wet, her coat soaked from the sudden downpour. He greeted her at the door with a warm towel and a playful smile. "You didn't have to run through the rain," he teased, helping her dry off. She shrugged. "I didn't want to keep you waiting." They settled in the living room. A soft fire crackled in the fireplace, casting a cozy glow. Matthew had ordered takeout Thai food, one of Liz's favorites. They ate, chatted about their day, and then curled up on the sofa, watching the rain lash against the huge windows. At some point, Matthew turned to her, an unusual seriousness in his eyes. Her heart fluttered. He had that same nervous energy she recognized from the gala. He took her hands, his voice trembling slightly. "We've been together for a while now. We've seen each other at our best and worst. You've taught me the meaning of real love and kindness. And I realize I don't want to face another day without knowing you'll be by my side." Liz's pulse raced. She had a guess where this was heading, but she could hardly breathe. Matthew reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Opening it, he revealed a simple, elegant ring with a sapphire stone. "I wanted something that reminded me of you. Blue, like the dress you wore to the gala. Will you marry me, Liz?" Tears welled up in her eyes. She pressed a hand to her mouth, overcome with emotion. Memories flashed through her mind: the alley, his tears, their quiet moments of shared vulnerability, and how far they had come. She saw the genuine love in his eyes and knew her answer. "Yes," she whispered, voice shaking. "I'll marry you." He slipped the ring onto her finger, and they embraced, the rain outside intensifying as if celebrating their union. Her heart felt like it might burst from happiness. He kissed her softly, and she melted into him, all her fears and doubts falling away in that tender moment. The weeks leading to their wedding were filled with excitement and careful planning. They agreed on a small ceremony, surrounded by close friends and family. Matthew insisted on taking care of most expenses, but Liz insisted on contributing what she could. She picked out a simple gown, something that reminded her of the night she first saw him in that alley. He chose a classic suit without too much flair. They decided to hold the ceremony in a beautiful garden. The venue was not overly grand, but it had a peaceful charm. On the day of the wedding, the sun shone brightly, the sky a clear blue. Flowers lined the aisle, and there was a gentle breeze whispering through the leaves. Liz stood at the end of the aisle, heart pounding with excitement, wearing her white gown. She saw Matthew waiting for her by the arch, looking dashing in his suit. In his eyes, she saw love, gratitude, and the promise of a shared future. Her sister Marissa, serving as her maid of honor, gave her arm a quick squeeze before Liz began her walk. Soft music played, and the gathered guests smiled with genuine happiness. Matthew's parents were there, beaming. Mrs. Wallace sat in a special seat, waving a tissue as tears welled up. Even some of Liz's co-workers came, cheering for the woman who had once been just another cashier and caretaker. Matthew's business associates were also present, looking on with respect. The air buzzed with joy. When Liz reached Matthew, he took her hands in his. The officiant began the ceremony, but Liz barely heard the words, her heart focused on Matthew's gaze. When it came time for vows, Matthew spoke first, his voice steady yet emotional. Liz, when I first met you, I was broken, lost, and sobbing in an alley. You taught me that kindness can come from unexpected places, and that real love is about seeing someone at their worst and choosing to stand beside them. I promise to cherish you, to respect you, and to grow with you for the rest of my life. Liz's throat tightened with emotion as she began her vow. Matthew, you came into my life when I least expected it. You showed me that genuine care and compassion can overcome heartbreak. I promise to support you, to stand by your side through every challenge, and to love you with all that I am. They exchanged ringes, a simple band. Hers the sapphire ring that spoke of their shared memories. The officiant pronounced them husband and wife. They kissed under the archway of flowers, laughter rippling through the guests. Petals were tossed into the air, and the moment felt like pure magic. After the ceremony, they celebrated with a modest reception. There was music and dancing, but nothing too extravagant. The highlight was a heartfelt toast from Marissa, who joked about how Liz once never wanted to speak to a big-shot businessman, yet ended up marrying one. Matthew's father also gave a toast, expressing how proud he was to see his son find true happiness. Liz felt tears on her cheeks more than once, overwhelmed by the love that surrounded them. As evening approached, the newlyweds slipped away for a quiet moment. They found a small corner of the garden, near a fountain, where they could be alone. Matthew wrapped his arms around Liz, who rested her head on his chest, listening to his steady heartbeat. "Thank you," he whispered, "for saving me that night." Liz looked up at him, her eyes shining with gratitude and joy. "We saved each other," she said softly, "and we'll keep saving each other for as long as we both live." He smiled, brushing his lips across her forehead. In that tender moment, they both understood that their story began in heartbreak, but ended in hope. The past was behind them, replaced by a future they would face together, two hearts that had found each other against the odds, proving that even in the darkest alley, love could bloom. They held each other close, the hum of the reception drifting softly in the background. The garden lights twinkled like little stars around them, and in the circle of each other's arms, they felt an unbreakable bond that promised a lifetime of shared dreams and unwavering devotion.